It is a wet Saturday at Spa-Francorchamps. Welcome everybody to race 2 of the weekend in Lamborghini Super Trofeo. But I'm afraid to say we are a few minutes away yet from getting the race underway. There's been a drama in one of the earlier races and barrier damage is just delaying matters. So we are looking at about 20 minutes or so before we can get things underway. And because it's a wet track as well, they've only been out on track in the dry hitherto, it will be a safety car start rather than the traditional rolling start that we have for Super Trofeo. So as you see, the estimated start of the race is 11:05. That's about 25 minutes or so away, but when the cars leave the line, it will be the start of the race, as it's to be a safety car start, as we understand it. Ben Constanduras and David Addison trackside, wet shod cars, Hankook tyres on the cars this year down on the grid. Rather bedraggled teams that have been standing there for a while, waiting for the cars released, but we can't go racing, as I say, because barrier damage from a support race earlier on in the day is still being attended to elsewhere on the circuit. It's race day for the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa, in which there is a very strong Lamborghini presence. That means that the grandstands are getting pretty full. It also means that they're getting full because people are sheltering from the rain that arrived at about 8 o'clock this morning, and it is not seemingly going to get much drier in the short term. Gemma Scott is down on the grid, and it gives us a chance to hear from one or two of the drivers, including the pole man, Cedric Wouters.
Cedric, it's pretty grim down here on the grid at the moment. This is your first outing here at Spa with this championship, and you've already smashed it and put it on pole, right?
Yeah, quite surprised that we managed to put it on pole in Q2. We've been working hard on the car all weekend, and it paid off. Also yesterday in race 1 it was quite okay. Obviously starting in 12th was not ideal. But yeah, today we're in a good position to start the race, so let's see what we can do.
And of course, Spa can be tricky in the wet. How are you looking forward to this?
It's been a while since I last drove Spa in the wet, so yeah, it's always tricky, and you have to need a couple of laps always to just get into a rhythm. But yeah, it's the same for everyone, so I think I'm excited, looking forward.
Of course, the race is going to start under the safety car, we've heard. How easy is it for you to control the pack?
Yeah, I think it's the first thing will be to really get the tires up to temperature, so we're not surprised at the start. And then, yeah, went really through the starting procedure when we were back in the truck to make sure that we have a good getaway. But yeah, we'll see. It's a first, so I'm a bit. Yeah, it's not easy to really know where to go.
Absolutely. Well, I'll let you close the door so the window doesn't mist up. But thank you very much and have a great race.
Thank you very much.
So Cedric Wouters, the man on pole position. In yesterday's race, he ended up 4th, although that was slightly penalty affected. The penalties coming through, and it's often the case, pit stop infringements. There's a regulation time that people weren't really adhering to, and 1 or 2 people were thousandths under, and other people were full seconds under. Brendan Leach there closes the window and says, just leave me to it, I'm concentrating.
Couple of years now for Brendan in Europe, living at the Leopard team base and coming over from New Zealand and making his career over here. After, I mean, New Zealand's got some fantastic race circuits and a great place to grow nationally, but he wanted to grow internationally, and so has very much been campaigning that Lamborghini over the last couple of years, and has got a bit of a budget also to participate in the 24 hours this weekend as well. So this will be invaluable for that if we continue with the raining conditions throughout the day. And it is it's not a heavy rain, it's just drizzle. And it has just been drizzling for about 5 or 6 hours. But if it continues to do so, then Brendan will gain so much knowledge of the circuit, where it's maybe more grippy than on the racing line, because the racing line has rubber down and rubber and water don't mix. We can go wide, and we can kind of lean on the outside of a circuit where there isn't rubber, but there is grip. And that's some of the things, okay, he wants to win this race and he wants to campaign for this championship, but he can also learn a lot for later on too with regards to that. And that's also why we will go 1 lap under safety car, which is kind of their warm-up lap, and then when we start the clock, they will then stay behind the safety car for another 2 laps before we then release and go racing, so they gain some knowledge.
Indeed so, and you see also down on the grid the different classes. You've got Pro, Pro-Am, Am and the Lamborghini Cup as well, so a real mix of drivers. The grid for this race, based on a separate qualifying session, not affected by yesterday's result, so the driver in the 2 driver cars that did this qualifying session sets the time, is the start driver. You don't have to have a co-driver. The regulations have always allowed for solo or double driver entries, but if you're a soloist, it's a slightly longer pit stop by 3 seconds.
And it is soloists that occupy the front row. We saw Wouters on the pole, Brendan Leach alongside, both of those drivers doing the full 50-minute race. That's what we're expecting the race lengths to be, but we are in delay, quite a long delay, and we might have to then limit the length of this race to get our 24 hours underway at 4:30. Let's go back down to the slightly soggy grid with Gemma Scott.
Tomo, you're pulling double duties, so to speak, this weekend, racing in the Super Trofeo and in the GT3 big 24-hour.
Yeah, it's crazy. It keeps us quite busy with Adam. We are teammates in the Trofeo and in the Audi, so it's quite good. You know, we have double time on track.
Yeah.
Cars are quite different, but it's good to have a taste of the weather, especially in this tricky weather. It's raining a lot, and apparently for the race of the 24 it's going to be the same, so it's okay. It's like, let's say, an advantage.
It's very different to the weather we had in qualifying though, because this is real fine misty rain.
Yeah, and especially with this car, for me it's going to be my first time on the rain condition with a GT. We don't know the rain tires so far, so yeah, it's going to be a first experience, so let's see how it goes.
And this championship, of course, seems to be ever increasing in numbers. It's an incredibly challenging and competitive one.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, I came from prototype, and I was not expecting this high level in terms of driving. For sure, the Lamborghini is something really cool. So yeah, the level is amazing. The car felt really good to drive. Yesterday we were leading the race, but unfortunately we had a drive-through because we shortcut a bit too much the pit time. But it's how it is. It's race. We were like that, wanted to win the race. So no, I think today with the rain it's going to be another story. We are P8, but it's manageable to go ahead.
Well, have a great race. Bon courage.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thomas Laurent made his name really as a teenager at Le Mans, being incredibly impressive in prototype racing, but it's good to have him now in GT cars. So the track, of course, is getting wetter all the time. I know that's an obvious thing to say, but that rain is not relenting. And while they're sitting on the grid, of course, it's just getting wetter and wetter.
Yeah, Thomas Laurent, couldn't you believe he's only 25 years old? Considering he started at Le Mans and stood on the top step of the podium in class, second overall in 2017 at Le Mans. It's amazing to think that he is still only 25 years of age and has very little experience in GT cars because of everything that he's done at Le Mans in prototypes in LMP3 and in LMP2 and up to the top class with Rebellion 1 year. He did a little bit of the French GT4 Cup a good few years back and did do the Porsche Carrera Cup as well in his first year of competitive car racing. He was also a very, very good karter, but his career has kind of gone sideways a little bit, hasn't it, from the prototypes into Lamborghini. Maybe also with a thought to the fact that Lamborghini are going to be bringing a hypercar to Le Mans in 2024. Do you go, I've got the prototype experience, I've got the Lamborghini experience, come and sign me up?
It's not a bad thought because Lamborghini has a young driver program. It's got its junior driver program, and it has fully factory drivers like many of the brands do. So it's not a bad organisation to get involved in. Number 9 there, coming back for a second season of Lamborghini racing. That's the Largin Oliver Söderström car, and it's another that comes through the Target Racing banner, and the teams still stand and wait. We are still round about 15 minutes away from the race getting underway because of the barrier repair work going on elsewhere on the circuit. Now, another man that's been a welcome addition to the Super Trofeo ranks this year is the very fast Dutch driver Jelmer Berman, and he's with Gemma.
Yeah, I mean, you just said to me, I'm the only fool here on the grid. It's pretty gross. But you were having a good chat with your teammate. What were you talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nigel's doing a great job, but he's not very experienced yet. So it's only his third real racing year. So, you know, these conditions, I've seen it all before, but for him, a lot of it is new. So I try to pass on my experience as good as I can. And, you know, therefore you have to be in the rain on the grid.
For somebody who is so new to the racing here at Spa, how difficult is it to get to load on this track?
Well, I mean, the track is very challenging. We did a test day a couple of weeks ago, so at least he's quite aware of the track. We've gone through some videos and stuff with wet lines and so on. So he's a good learner. He picks up really well. So I've got all the confidence that he will do well. But obviously, a lot of cars together. Everyone wants to get to the front. So let's hope that everything stays, fair and safe, and that we can all enjoy our race.
That rain is starting to get heavier as well, isn't it? I can feel it as we're standing here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind. The situation where the track is drying, you don't know what to do with tires, and you don't know if the tires will last because we don't have any experience with this tire. It's literally the first time we're on it. So it makes it quite difficult. But then if you have drying conditions, you don't know how long you can push it. So actually, it's better just to have a wet race, then at least you'll get to the end with the tire.
Well, have a great race. Thank you very much for talking to us, Jelmer.
Thank you.
Jan Berman, somebody else's career has gone a bit sideways, hasn't it, in a way, because he used to be a real front runner in GT racing, but he's been forgotten about in the last couple of years, which is a real shame. Good to have him on this grid.
Makes a good point, though, with the fact that the Hankook tyres for 2023 moving away from Pirelli, and this is the first wet session that they've had. They were in Paul Ricard, where we did have wet sessions, but this is what we saw yesterday. Look how different the conditions are.
And the real talking point of the first corner was the very aggressive Frederik Schandorf launched it up the inside, grabbed the race lead briefly, but couldn't slow the car down in time, and he ran wide, and that let a fair chunk of the leading gaggle through. Contact then between the white car of Loris Spinelli and Schandorf as they went downhill. That was Dan Arrow getting it wrong coming out of Eau Rouge. He was able to soldier on in the car that he shared with Amber Eaton. Those that ran wide at La Source and elsewhere brought lots of gravel onto the road. Those little rocks can catch out the unwary. Great move by Loris Spinelli. He went through to get second place away from Thomas Laurent before the pit window opened. And on the pit stops, it was the race leading car of Mattia Michelotto being handed over to the second driver of Gilles Stadsbader. Others were tripping over themselves down at the chicane. Stadsbader picked up a penalty because they were short on the pit stop as Amaury Bonduel's gold car went ahead of Amber Eaton to gain ground into the chicane. He ran a little bit wide on the exit. Amber Eaton came back to attack, and with damage, heading for the pit lane was Emanuele Colombini, Emanuele Zonzini's car. Jelmer Berman looking good towards the end. Drama from Ronit Formanek at the very end of the race. He got attacked by Michel Blanchemont, turned around at Paul Blanchemont through the gravel as well. So up to the line came the leading VSR entry of Gilles Stadsbader to win on the road. Then he had a time penalty, dropped behind the Adam Ateki Thomas Laurent car, but that had a penalty, so he got the win back. Adam Ateki and Thomas Laurent had a drive-through penalty yesterday, but they did not serve it, so that had to be converted into a time penalty at the end of the race, and that dropped them a long way down because they'd also bunched up because of a late race safety car anyway.
Yeah, very unfortunate to have those penalties looming since the pit stops, but they weren't announced until after the safety car, which meant the effect of them was a lot harder than had they had a clean race to the end of the race.
Right, let's go back to the grid. Gemma is trying to keep warm, I think, by running up and down a lot. And she's now found Ronit Formanek, who we saw getting turned around into a spin yesterday.
Brunik, we're very much mid-pack here. What's the objective?
Sorry?
We're very much in the middle of the field. What's the objective here for the race?
Yeah, but I think it's the race. It's very difficult, but it's the track is the wet. We need what happened in our car. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Have a great race.
I'd like to know what the graphics on his helmet are.
It's a roulette wheel, isn't it?
Well, it is, but
I like it. It's good.
It looks cool.
Something different there. Yeah.
But why?
Why not?
Well, he might need a little bit of luck in the middle of the pack there because it's going to be very difficult to see anything. It's quite difficult to see anything, and there's no cars moving, such as the kind of the low-lying fog and misty rain that we've got.
So I was going to say something about it being a lottery in these conditions, and you've kind of got that reflected on the crash helmet, as you say, the roulette wheel. There's the family Vandenberg car. Benjamin Vandenberg will go first, and then his dad, Robert, will take over. We've had the 10-minute board. Start behind safety car. Minimum of 2 laps, says the race director, Alain Adon, because they've had no wet running all weekend. Ben's fascinating fact of the weekend was that up until Friday, when the heavens... No, Thursday evening, when the heavens opened, it hadn't rained here for 5 weeks.
Would you believe?
Which nobody believes at all.
No. it has been so very dry in the north of Europe. If you don't, and anywhere where you would expect it to be nice and beach weather has not been in Europe.
Okay.
It's been pretty awful.
Let's go back to the grid. Wilfried Casarbon, sharing with the disabled driver Nigel Bailly, is going to have a chat in French, this time with Gemma.
Wilfried's just told me he knows the circuit a little bit here. He's driven this 4 times. Wilfried, vous connaissez un peu le circuit. C'est la 4e fois ici à Spa.
Oui, exactement. 4e fois, très beau circuit. Ça va être sympa sous la pluie. Premier virage, ça va être compliqué, je pense. Mais après, ça va être sympa. Ouais.
Just saying there that yes, the 4th time here is going to be complicated with the rain, and some of those corners are going to be very, very tricky. Voilà, avec tous les pilotes derrière, on est à peu près milieu de la grille.
Oui, exact, milieu de grille, donc ça risque de bousculer. Donc ça va être sympa pour les spectateurs, et puis on va devoir faire attention, quoi. C'est ça le problème.
Absolument. Bonne course.
Merci beaucoup.
Wilfried just saying there, we're up roughly in the middle of the field, and it's going to be a little bit of competitiveness between the drivers. There's going to be maybe, hopefully not so much contact. He said it's going to be great for the spectators, but difficult for the drivers.
So that car has a steering wheel and pedals, as you would expect in any race car, for Wilfried to use, but then has a different steering wheel for Nigel Bailly, who comes in, who is disabled. So he has to have hand controls, and they, as well as change the driver, they change the steering wheel, which then has effectively a throttle system and a brake system within it. I presume it must have an automatic gearbox when it's Nigel's, because you need your hands to change, usually to change gear on the flappy paddles, but there would just be too many paddles to have if you've got an accelerator, and brake and a gear on the same steering wheel.
Yes.
So it's very interesting to see that pit stop when it happens.
That's Jean-Francois Bruno, and I draw attention to him because the car didn't get into the race yesterday for reasons we never got to the bottom of, but it is on the grid today. He shares with Caron Lee, and Jean-Francois Bruno for Lippert Motorsport is 24th on the grid, and let's hope that this turns out to be a decent result for them, seeing that they've only got the one race this weekend now.
Although they do have also a 24 hours to do later on today.
Indeed, yes.
Caron Lee, Jean-Francois Bruno, and I think Brendan Leach is part of that same team, who is a bit further up the grid. All kind of lifers at Lippert.
Lifers at Lippert, yes, exactly. So another car to watch that will be, as the fans, and inevitably there are lots of Valentino Rossi fans at Spa, because the great man is here for the 24 hours. Now, we've had a 10-minute board, I think I'm right in saying, and therefore the countdown is continuing. We'll have the teams leaving the grid shortly, and with a safety car start, of course, the benefit is that the clock starts as soon as the safety car pulls away. So a little bit of this lost time is sort of being clawed back.
I think I heard that we would do one lap, and then when we get to the start line, then the clock would start after that first lap. So it wouldn't directly start when we roll, but actually...
Okay, but that's not a safety car start then, is it?
No, but you still need to do the warm-up lap before we do the start. You would normally have a full warm-up lap before the start. I think I heard that. We'll find out.
In the meantime, as we check our FIA rule book, we'll go back to Gemma on the grid.
Dougie, nice to find a driver out of the car, actually, I have to say. This is going to be a tricky start behind a safety car. How have you prepared yourselves?
In terms of preparation, I don't think we really done much, because I've never driven in the wet in this car, never in this track. So it would be all about just learning the corner as soon as you can when you get out of the pit, and feel the car, drive to the grip. You know, because it's the same with any other car. So I think, you know, it could be tricky with all the safety car stuff, sprays, but yeah, we should do our usual stuff. It should be good.
As you say, taking it easy and taking it sensibly. How are you enjoying it here at Spa?
Yeah, it's an awesome track. Probably the best track I've ever been to. Shame I've not done any testing again because I had exams. Delanta couldn't do it as well. So, you know, we just do our best, and hopefully we end up far forward.
Good luck to you. Have a great race. Thanks a lot, Dougie.
Dougie Bolger, one of the Lamborghini young drivers, Anglo-Japanese, incidentally, racing here for the first time. And as you were hearing, his co-driver in the Target racing car is the redoubtable Dilanfa Malagamua, the Sri Lankan driver. There aren't many motor racing drivers from Sri Lanka, and Dilanfa Malagamua has done a huge amount of racing. He's a TV presenter in his home country on motoring programs. He's raced in the Bathurst 24 hours. He's raced all sorts of things all over the world. Great character. And the 5-minute board has just been shown, which is heartening news. And now we have the leading car making its way around the lap, ready for the safety car to take the field away.
I know that there's a street circuit at in Sri Lanka that they do racing. I've seen that. They call it the Super Racing Weekend. I don't think there's a permanent circuit. There'll be probably some kart tracks, but I'm not sure there's a permanent racetrack in Sri Lanka. And it is amazing when you don't have a culture in your country of motor racing, that there are these individuals that pop out and become the representative of that country in the motorsport world.
Yeah, going back to your point earlier on about Brendan Leach and New Zealand, and
they've got lots.
Circuits. New Zealand, Denmark, tiny little countries, but have always produced lots of really good racing drivers.
And I mean, New Zealand's got something like 7 or 8 decent racetracks that they can have a national championship on, almost in equal terms to the UK in terms of the amount of proper racetracks they've got.
Gosh. Yeah. And did, of course, have its touring car street race for a time. So we are getting closer to race start time. The grid is now being cleared. The last engineers stand with the cars ready to fire up the engines on the 1-minute board to close the doors before we go racing. Igor Rodchev is there in the Artline entry. He qualified really well for this race, 4th on the grid, but of course they qualified in the dry. It's now going to be wet, so it could be all gloves off, all bets off, you name it, everybody off when we get racing.
Oh no,
so,
don't say that.
Don't say that. I think certainly staying on the road is going to be absolutely critical. And in a few cases, the drivers, certainly of the Pro-Am cars or the Am cars, cannot wait for the pit window when they can get their co-driver in.
I sensed apprehension in Dougie Bolger's voice when we were speaking to him. I'm not sure he's super comfortable and confident with jumping into a car that he's never driven in the wet and to a circuit that he's never driven before, let alone in the wet. And tyres that they don't know at all. Let's not forget, this is only the 2nd weekend of their championship. They started their year at Paul Ricard, slightly delayed because of the inability to race at Imola. And the change of tyre this year as well. The car's very much similar to what they've experienced last year. But if you're a new driver, then yeah, the whole thing is new. And Spa is a formidable place to race, regardless of weather conditions.
So rear lights on, just as they would be in a single-seater. Hankook wets, new tyre, of course, after all those years of an Italian tyre supplier. Hankook rubber being used this year. And so there, on pole position, is Cedric Wouters. With him at the front of the grid, Brendan Leach, wiper on, sole wiper, clearing half the screen.
You need.
Yeah, that's as long as you can see. Eduardo Liberati behind, incidentally, we've not really touched on, in the Brutal Fish Racing Team car that he shares with Martin Reed, but he's going to be a man to watch on the first stint.
Imagine turning into turn 1 at La Source there with on the right-hand side, the windscreen wipers not being cleared. You are actually going to be slightly compromised by that lack of clarity. There is the Brutal Fish car, as you mentioned. Brutal Fish, the brand of Martin Rieber, who's been racing in touring cars for many, many years and has come over to have more fun in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and that's what he discovered last year, and that's why he stayed with us. No politics, no backstabbing, no difficulties in the paddock, just lots of fun. And he's really loved it, but he hasn't got to grips with the Lamborghini in the same way that he was able to participate right at the sharp end in a touring car yet.
But in Eduardo Liberati, he's got a really good co-driver from whom he can learn. Sebastian Balthazar and Marzio Moretti here. Marzio Moretti will start in the Oregon entry. Sebastian Balthazar returning to the series. He used to show with Noah Watt, you might remember, a couple of years back. Marzio Moretti up from the Italian GT Championship last year. And so the engine's now fired, the grid is now being cleared, so we're very nearly in business. 50-minute race, pit window between 20 and 30 minutes. And the cars have to be stationary for a minute and a half if you are a solo driver, 87 seconds stationary if you are on your own, and then you add the drive time of about 71 seconds line to line on top of that.
Yeah, so it equated to a 2 minutes and 11:12, wasn't it? That was the allowed pit stop time, and we found people doing 10s were investigated for being a little bit too fast. So that's right, the leader did a 10.5 and was given 1.5 second penalty for doing so.
So then, the grid formed, safety car is going to lead them around, and then the 4th race of Lamborghini Super Trofeo for this season is set to get underway then. These cars look great, they sound great. We've got lots of newcomers. Of course, Lamborghini these days using this championship, yes, as a good place for the gentleman racers to have some fun, but also for career racing drivers to try to launch their careers. So the last few mechanics about to make their way off the grid. And so that now takes everything into the control of the race director, who, if he's happy, will give the instruction that the safety car can lead away. But as yet, that has not happened. Now, why are we still waiting? There's nothing on the grid that I can see, but the instruction has not yet been given. So
there we go.
We now, and the clock starts, as predicted, have the race underway. So safety car start, it will have a minimum of 2 laps, so the drivers can assess what the grip is like in the wet. But notionally, the race is on, albeit under control conditions.
And race control also get a chance to see how much spray is being kicked up and what the kind of conditions will be like for the drivers. And look at this, Moretti is on the just 5th position on the grid, and already visibility inside that car quite tricky. They hadn't even got much speed up.
No.
The leading car would have reported back to race control where there might be puddles, but there is a decent amount of water at the bottom of the hill there.
And of course, it has been getting wetter, as we were saying, while they were sat on the grid. Cedric Wouters is the man that starts on pole position. Brendan Leach with him at the front of the grid, ahead of Eduardo Liberati and Igor Arutchev. Then it's Marzio Moretti and Oliver Söderström lining up 6th. 7th, it is Amaury Bonduel. Adam Matecki is alongside him. On the 5th row, Rodrigo Testa. And then alongside him, it is Patrick Matheson, former British GT4 champion, Stefan Tribodini, and then yesterday's winner, Gilles Stadsbader, on the 6th row of the grid. The next row is where you will find Gabriel Rindoni, the AM winner yesterday, and Renaud Kuppens, ahead of then Edgar Maloin and Filippo Berto for Oregon. Guillaume Pujubaya and Emanuele Colombini come on the 9th row. The 10th row, Abby Eaton starting alongside Giovanna Anapoli. On the 11th row, Andrzej Lewandowski and Donovan Privitello lines up alongside him after a spin yesterday. Nigel Skundervoort and Jean-Francois Bruno are on the 12th row. Row 13, Ibrahim Badaway and Karim Ogier, very experienced driver, of course. On the 14th row of the grid, Bronek Fomenek and another very experienced man, Marc Rostam, ahead of Alex Au and Wilfried Casalbon on the 15th row. Row 16, Ricardo Ianiello and Benjamin Vandenberg. Row 17 is Holger Harmsen and Paolo Bilieri. The 18th row, Michel Blanchemont and Hugo Conde, who started in the pits yesterday, his car. Gerard van der Horst lines up alongside Mariusz Mikos. Then it is Enrico Betra and Antonio Vossos that had a spin yesterday. Gregor Machulski lines up in the company of Jose Alfredo Hernandez Ortega, ahead of Jason Keats and Dilantha Malagamua. Next row of the grid offers up Serge Dom and Libor Dvoracek, and the back row is Kumar Prabhakaran and Han Song Ting, who will complete 48 cars. And as far as I could tell, they were all present and correct. Now, that order is now effectively redundant because the cars are in the single file behind the safety car, but the laps that they are doing and the time that they are taking all counts in the 50 minutes.
And I wonder whether we saw Malagamua have a little spin because I noticed his car was going backwards on our timing screen. The same as Jason Keats, actually. A lot slower than you would expect from that particular position in this long train of cars.
Okay.
We'll see as they come through the second sector whether it readjusts itself and they readjust their position. But slightly strange that the timing screen, which is in grid order, should then alternate and change around under safety car.
Right, so the safety car leads them around, and the drivers having a look at the circuit. So the field coming then now up to the chicane. We are expecting a minimum of 2 laps behind the safety car, minimum of 2 laps. And the field now comes towards the chicane. You can see the drivers edging left and right to try to generate a little bit of temperature into the tyres.
I think they need the safety car to drive faster.
Well, let's see.
They need to try and generate some temperature in everything.
But I would suggest that you do a start lap to let everyone have a look. Then your next lap is a bit quicker and a bit quicker still. But it almost looks to me as though the safety car is coming to a halt. Now, let's just see that I'm looking onto the grid. There aren't any marshals, but the safety car is coming slowly to the line. And the safety car will stop at the start line, we are being told.
Okay.
So is this conditions related or is there something else? I can't tell you as yet. But the safety car will stop at the start line. So although the race is on, we are now going to have a race suspension with the safety car stopping. And after that, I am as interested as you all to know what we do next and how this affects the rest of the day in every sense, because the clock is still going to tick and the safety car has stopped.
So no instructions from race control that we are suspending the race. There is a safety car rather than a red flag, but the cars are not moving. And there's a long queue of cars. It's not that they're all stopping on the start line. Half of them are going to have to stop down at Blanchimont, such as the amount of cars we've got on circuit. Oh, going again.
Indeed. So we are now back on. So the cars restart and we continue behind the safety car. So a little hiatus. And so now things are back underway. Down through La Source, and the race order, effectively the grid. Now, it was Prabhakaran, wasn't it, you were getting concerned about? Malagamua.
Yeah.
So, yes, he has fallen a little bit further back, and the other one was Jason Keats. Yes, he's relatively out of sequence. I concur looking at his sector time that Jason was slow in sector 1 on that lap, suggesting that he did have a moment.
What seems curious is they haven't got themselves back into the position that they should be on the grid. Because
you can't overtake under the safety car and the race is on. It's not a rolling start, race has started. So if you spin, hard luck.
Yeah. Yes, if it was a warm-up lap, then you would be able to.
But it's a race lap.
Yeah, okay.
A notional racing lap, but you're with me. It's part of the race, so you can't do it, can't overtake.
And Malagamua has now got past Jason Keats on the last sector. And that would have been potentially being caught out by having to stop and then start again.
Yeah.
So there is a little something going on at the back of our field.
There is a subplot, yes, quite. So now what we are expecting is that this will be a quicker lap, because exactly what Ben was saying, they will need to go quicker to generate temperature. But now that we can plan for the start of the race in earnest, the sort of first racing lap, if you like, green flag lap, then the safety car's pace can be increased. You can see how much water has fallen on the road. It wouldn't be Spa without rain, would it?
And it actually, considering it's not been heavy rain out there. It's not been the kind of rain that we saw on Thursday night for qualifying. This is very much kind of light drizzle, but just so much of it with a lack of track activity. Once we get these cars rolling, once they get some temperature into the tyres, but more the brakes into the rims, into the tyres. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that.
Hankook's finest, Lamborghini's finest, camera work at its finest as well.
And you can see that if you generate temperature in the brake, how quickly that temperature is going to radiate into the rim, which will then go into the rubber. And all of that then creates a kind of a burning effect on the water. So you've got the block pattern, which lifts the water off the ground, but also if there's enough temperature, it also slightly, let's say, burns it off. And there might be an effect whereby there's not as much rain falling as there are the amount of cars clearing, and we might get better conditions. But we do need the cars to be going around the circuit to do so.
Another plus is there are 48 of them.
Yes,
try
exactly.
and squeegee away that water.
Yeah, there's not so many McLarens coming up in the next race, but then the GT4s have got even more.
Yeah, well, that's McLaren's problem.
Yes.
You know, they haven't got many, and it's a wet roll. You know, it's not down to Lamborghini to clear the road for them. So, of course, the other element to all of this is that the pit window is being approached. We've had now very nearly 10 minutes, and the first stint is 20.
And we've got, in the Pro-Am lineups, the Am drivers starting.
Yes.
I mean, that would be a bit
bit
frustrating for the Ams.
Well, it is.
We've seen it before.
But it also gives them a chance of a better result, because the field is going to be more compact when you put your Pro in. So in the case of, let's find one quickly, Nigel Skundervoort, 23rd, as an example. I was going to say Andrei Lewandowski, 21st, but either or. they are going to give away very little time relative to what it would be under a full green stint before their quick co-driver gets in. Flip side of the coin, Eduardo Liberati, he will give way to the slower Martin Rieber. That car is really compromised, but you know, that's just the way that they chose to do race 1, race 2. Right, the pace is definitely quicker, isn't it, as they come across the line, and we have had effectively now 1 lap behind the safety car, 1 proper lap, rather than that slightly stop-start first one.
There are still things going on in the last kind of 10 positions on this race. Well, we're about to get them over the line, and I think we'll see even more changes of place from the last couple of cars, curiously.
The timing screen, Swiss Timing, the timekeeping service, illustrates if somebody's gained or lost a position with a little green or a red arrow up or down. So the information is there for race control. There's no getting away from it for the drivers if you have overtaken, and the big safety car legend is on that timing screen as well.
And we had on our big graphic on the left-hand side, that also changes. That changes per sector, whereas our timing screen changes per lap. So I have seen a couple of people jumping around in 43rd, 44th, 45th position. They've got rid of it now, so we can't see it. But I think Prabo Karen has lost a couple of spots.
Right. It does look a little bit calmer, though, on that timing screen as we prepare then for the start of the race in earnest. It's been a really mixed weekend again in terms of weather. Yesterday, we were talking about how hot and sunny it was. It was a really nice day on Wednesday and most of Thursday until it rained so heavily that night practice was cancelled, and there's a stationary car coming out of Radion, which I suspect has had a spin and stalled, and so now has to go through this sort of reset. It's about 30 seconds of power down, power up. And who is that? Let's try and see a number. Oh, it is Skundevord, isn't it?
The 89 Lineling's car that...
yeah.
And that's spun at the top of Eau Rouge, isn't it, Radion? Yeah. Okay, not spun. But as you point out, he can't get his position back now. He's now at the back of the field. So Jelmer Berman even more work to do once that car is handed over.
Indeed so.
Sometimes race control doesn't like opening the pits when we're under safety car because everybody comes in at the same time and it gets very chaotic.
Indeed, but the hope would be that you would have gone green by, what have we got, 12 minutes?
Yeah.
So, you know, 1 more lap, you'd be green. It might be a very short racing stint up to the pit window, but you don't need to delay the pit window. Poor old Alain Adon having to cope with all of this. He's got 24 hours of the main race yet, so glad he put his hand up for this, aren't you, Alain? The cars come through the Cours Paul Frère, accelerating up now towards the long left-hander of Blanchimont once again. So, under controlled conditions, they're lapping at about 5 minutes, but this one I think will be quicker still because it's been a proper flowing lap, and we'll see also where Skundevord has dropped to after that stoppage.
I went faster in my Smart. Yes, I raced
You
a Smart.
raced a Smart car around here?
I did. Yeah, 4:12, I think my fastest lap was.
On April Fool's Day was this, a Smart car race?
It was actually,
that a thing?
It was a beautiful day in October.
How many others?
I think there was about 15. It was the Smart Championship was a Belgian championship.
Right.
There was a few English that joined.
Right. No further questions, Your Honour. Right, the car's over the timing line, and we, as I say, edge closer to that pit window. So we've got 37 minutes to go. We've only got 7 minutes then. They might get about 1 racing lap in, 2 at the most, before the window opens. And 89 spun and rejoined, we hear on the timing screen. So confirmation that Skundevord did have a spin, as we were suggesting.
Change of tarmac just there, where they last year reprofiled and got rid of the compression in Eau Rouge, and each different tarmac will offer different amounts of grip. This new tarmac is very dark. It's got rid of that not big bump that was actually kind of it was flood damage from the year before, where they had this massive flood in kind of April time. They had to cancel the race meeting that was here this weekend, that weekend. And Eau Rouge, literally, the river that runs underneath that part of the circuit, flooded over the top of the circuit, and the circuit itself and everything underneath it kind of collapsed. So the year that we came here for the 24 hours, there was this big bump and compression where all the cars hit the ground. And the work that was done before last year's race was to smoothen that out And it does mean that there is a kind of a big section of that part of the track where you can have different tarmac.
Yeah, Spa has been modernised quite a lot in recent years, and with the popularity, thanks to Dutch fans of Formula One, more grandstands have been built. You've got a motorbike lane there for the return of motorcycle racing to Spa-Francorchamps. That in turn has changed the nature of the circuit from run-off tarmac to gravel traps, which possibly has helped again in terms of track limits, because you have fewer corners where you can run off the road because of these gravel traps. I would say, looking at the pictures, much as I love Spa, it looks pretty horrible out there now, and I'm glad I'm not racing in it.
Glad I'm not a cameraman out there today.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And they're showing just how few cars you can see ahead. Look, 4, 5, maybe, that's it. That's the visibility that the drivers probably will even see less of if they're when they're in their cars.
So we've got 5 minutes before the pit window opens. Car 89, we are being told, has stopped at the exit of turn 4, therefore did not get going again. So I'm afraid to say that Nigel Skundervoort looks as though his day is done, and Jelmer Berman won't get into the car. When the lights go out on top of the safety car, then that's the indication it will peel in, and if the lights are going to be extinguished, it will be on this part of the circuit. Also rather badly delayed is number 65, the Han Song Ting car, suggesting that's had a moment somewhere and has spun itself to the back of the pack, although it was on the back row anyway. But lost a big chunk of time.
Yeah, 10 seconds back from Prabhakaran, who in itself is 6 seconds back from the nearest car. So the back of this field are slightly struggling with being able to keep up, or choosing to hang back, so they've got slightly better visibility, perhaps.
So into the chicane, once more they come.
I bet you the safety car driver is absolutely flat out.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. And
He's got a road car rather than a race car. He hasn't got the downforce.
No. And in these conditions, you know, everyone's watching him. Down to La Source.
That famous year where, was it Anthony Comas driving the safety car when it came out and drifted its way up Eau Rouge?
It might well have been, yes. Yes, Anthony used to get that job. He took me for a lap run, Kyle Army. First year we went with IGTC. It was quite a lap, actually. The pit window is looming.
Gosh, what's
if
that?
you were wondering how wet it was, that's a camera lens,
yes.
A locked-off camera, I think. Very arty, very wet. Right, so the race that never was for the first half, or the first portion at least, sadly, because of this delay and then the elongated safety car period.
Ooh.
Safety car is in this time, however, so we will go racing, and that should give us at least one racing lap before they need to worry about the window.
I think the weather's got as worse as it's been since I arrived at the circuit.
Look at that.
Out the window. And, I mean, you're basically judging the distance between you and the car in front by the lights, and that is it.
Yes, when I arrived early, it was dry, but the rain started and has fallen ever since, at varying degrees, but it's heavier certainly now. Right, safety car goes in this lap. I hate to say safety cars breed safety cars because we haven't really had a proper racing lap yet on which to judge, but with everybody bunched up, visibility, as Ben has been making the point, limited, and a very, very slippery track surface, anything could happen on that first lap.
A new experience for the drivers as well. New tyre to feel their way. They've got some experience now, a couple of laps, but not real flat-out racing speed. Haven't seen too many drivers kind of experimenting racing line-wise. You know, is there better grip around the outside here at Pouan? In certain cars, you'd send it in there and kind of understeer through the first part, and we have got a car parked off on the outside, and that, I think, is Jason Keats.
It's got damage on the left front, hasn't it? I think you might be right. Jason Keats' car, another of the Brutal Fish entries, and so it is at Eau Rouge, and are we going to be allowed to go racing with that car there? The hope would be that he might be able to fire up and drive away. Depends how much damage there is. So the race director will be keeping an eye on that, as will the clerk of the course, the local official, to monitor all the closed-circuit TV screens within race control at their disposal to get reports back from the observers. The lights are out then, so the plan is to go racing this time. And so it's been a long time since we had a racing lap for Lamborghinis, but it's about to start, and it's going to be really lively as they dive down towards La Source, the hairpin. Now the lights I thought were off, they've gone back on again, and it's not coming in this lap. The safety car in this lap legend has been taken away. It's because of this stationary car, so we are staying behind the safety car. lights are back on, and safety car on track is the message now. So it's going to stay out because of Jason Keats having had what looks like a spin into the barriers at Eau Rouge. And it also means that the pit window is going to open in 40 seconds. If you're at the back, you could squeeze in this lap and get it done.
Yeah. The leaders are not going to be able to do that, which will completely reshuffle the pack, because the second half, they kind of need to make it fair. They need to shut the pit lane now, because the guys at the back of the field can pit now. Then they catch up the safety car line, then all the rest in front pit, and the guys who've pitted one lap before will end up at the front of the field.
So the pit lane.
Where are we at?
Well,
how many seconds have we got left?
10 seconds. I think pretty much everybody's going to have to go past it.
Yeah.
Unless you
Just
crawled into the pit lane and you were last anyway. So safety car stays out. Pit window is now open. So this is the incident zone. Driver is okay, we understand. It's been a message put from race control, driver okay. Jason Keats. There you can see the clear-up operation, trying to get that car out of the way. So just when you think you're going to go racing. Now, here are the pit stops then. So down the pit lane, first up, comes number 14, Enrico Bettera, also in Antonios Vossos. That's put them in the pound seats all of a sudden.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this, I think, is what happened up at Eau Rouge. So have a look. Jason Keats just loses it, and bang, big hit that.
And no tyre barrier either, so into the concrete wall. It's like on the M25, everyone having a little rubberneck.
Yes, they are, aren't they? Yes, keep moving. Oh, look, it's him. Oh, look at the damage. Yes. Oh, that's expensive.
How did he do that?
Yeah.
That's always my first question. Any incident. How did he get there?
Yes.
Just a little bit excited on the throttle, trying to generate a bit of temperature, trying to get up to speed. It can happen anywhere.
In defence of the drivers, it might be rubbernecking to make sure he's okay, actually. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. 38 is Kumar Prabhakaran into the pit lane as well. And also there, arriving, is Enrico Bettera that we've seen come into the pit lane for the Oregon team car.
So lap pace, last lap was a 3:22. It's 2 minutes and 12 in the pit. So these guys can get through the pit lane in theory and get out before that safety car comes round to complete the lap. Then they can do a fast lap to catch back up and could find themselves at the end of the fit. Oh, we're on to red flag. How that affects the guys who are in the pits, I'm not quite sure. They might find themselves a whole lap down now.
A red flag in a race where you have safety car provision is unusual, because normally you would just let the safety car go around. The only thing I'm thinking here is that the time it's going to... the race will not resume. So that's it, I'm afraid to say. I was going to say the time taken to repair the barrier or move the car would mean that there's hardly any time to go racing. So you stop and restart, but there isn't time in the timetable to do that, potentially. The race will not be resumed. Well, that was...
We're so close.
Yes, quite.
We nearly had the safety car in.
Nearly had a racing lap. Yes. Right then, I can't wait to see the highlights that are going to be generated for us for this. Can't wait.
At least we have the slow-mo camera. The beautiful shots of rainfall and tyres rotating around the chicane. So
a result, such as it is, will be the grid, and it will be from 5 laps. The only shuffles being those people that had the occasional off. So that's why you've dropped down, but largely it'll be the grid. As far as the leading,
well, what about the poor guys
concerned,
that actually had some foresight and went into the pits?
But you would go back to the last completed lap. They completed that lap in the pit lane, so they might have dropped a place, but there weren't many cars staying out. Weren't many cars coming in. So, yeah, it's gone against them, but you would go back to that last completed lap. So, I think, where was Skunderverd on the grid? Because he was the first person that was a shuffle. So, probably your top 20 or so are about right from the grid. There or thereabouts.
How very F1 Spa a few years ago.
Well, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Cedric Wouters, then. He's the winner. Brendan Leach, he's second. And there for third is Eduardo Liberati. But
and Martin Rieber.
Well, indeed, who never got in the car.
Never got in the car.
It's one of those races. Yes.
They win their class, Pro-Am class. Moretti will be third in Pro.
So great shame for the Lamborghini Super Trofeo competitors. The delay, not their fault. The safety car interruption, not their fault. And then the red flag caused by one driver. So great shame. So Cedric Wouters and Brendan Leach, and then the third in pro, Marzio Moretti and Sebastian Balthazar. They were the top three, weren't they, within the class in pro. What about Pro-Am? That was Eduardo Liberati, wasn't it, from Igor Aruchev, Shotar Kazova. And Am, I want to say Giovanni Napoli was the winner there. And the Lamborghini Cup was the Privitellios, I think. Anyway, podiums, Becken. So this is where we turn to looking at the top three in each of the classes. So down the pit lane, they all come.
A positive is they've now had about half an hour's worth of experience on the Hankook wet tyre. So if they need to use it again throughout the rest of our season, which includes the Nürburgring, I think they go to Valencia as well, and they'll finish their year in with a double weekend in Vallelunga in November. So the wet tyre could be useful down near Rome for the I think it's 12th and 13th. They're racing on the Sunday and the Monday, and then the Thursday and the Friday of the week after to finish their year with World Finals during the actual weekend.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Proper festival. I wonder what happens on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Testing.
Ah.
So the incidents around the circuit, plus the pit window having got to that point of effectively halfway through the race not being resumed. It also helps to keep the timetable roughly on track for later on in the day, but a real shame that we weren't able to enjoy Lamborghinis at full cry around the Spa circuit. The reason, just to go back to Vallelunga being a double, as Ben was saying, is because the Imola races couldn't happen at the start of the year, so they have been put on to part of that programme, but it does give the Europeans a bit of an advantage in terms of the World Final, because they will have had extra track time, and that, to be fair to Lamborghini, is something that they don't normally want to happen. The reason the World Final exists in the way that it does is it's always at a neutral circuit. It's always somewhere that you've not been, but they can't really avoid that this year to try and find a date for the last round of the championship.
There's a couple of chicanes you could put in.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't want to use the small track because that would be rather too small. It's more like an oval.
Yes.
But there you could
tweak it a bit.
Yeah.
But it's always a great weekend, Lamborghini Super Trofeo World Finals, when the American Championship comes over, when the Asian Series comes over. It's good to have that back and running as well, and with good grids this year after a hiatus of effectively 3 seasons.
And presumably no limit to them entering the final of the European Series to gain more extra time?
Well, they have their own races anyway.
Yeah.
So
if you came the weekend before and entered the European,
you could do that, I guess. Yeah. I mean, normally they wouldn't enter that because they want to keep the car for their point-scoring race.
Right.
But if you've got a few days in between, rather than just 10 minutes in between to repair anything, then yeah, why not? Yeah. So, podiums beckon, and
which podium are they using? Because I've noticed in the document that we have that there are 3, obviously there are 2 podiums here. There's the endurance one and the F1 pits, and for the GT3 race they'll use the stage, which I don't think you can see on that shot, but
it's to the right, in the fan area, yeah.
And
so the cars drive in at the foot of it, which they used last year. Normally, the 24-hour race uses the podium on the endurance pits, and everything else uses the F1 pits.
Yeah.
But right now, the cars are all being held in the pit lane, so the thought of drivers getting to a podium is also not an immediate one.
Yes, it's curious that they haven't driven back into the paddock. The race will not resume, so they're definitely not going to go back on circuit. So they need to get down to their paddock, which is on the outside of Pouan.
Can I offer you another thought? They have to wait until whatever cars are due next, which are also slightly out of timetable sequence, can be allowed actually maybe into the pits.
The McLarens will be probably blocking the access because they're in the paddock just to the left-hand side there, so they need to go onto the track before the Lamborghinis can.
Yeah, so they need to go, and then the Lamborghinis can go into the paddock, and then drivers can go to the podium. And have you had a nice morning? It's a real shame that I do like the Super Trofeo, and it's a great shame that we haven't had a proper race as such. But what we do have is a result based on 4 laps And as I was saying, the bulk of it looks like the grid. So Cedric Wouters, the winner, from Brendan Leach and Eduardo Liberati. In 4th place, the car of Edgar Orodchev, Shotar Kazova. Sebastian Balthazar was 5th, ahead of Oliver Söderström. Amaury Bonduel, 7th, from Thomas Laurent. Rodrigo Testa was 9th. Patrick Matheson finished in 10th place. 11th, Stefan Tribodini. And in 12th, Gilles Stasbada. So that top 12, absolutely as the grid was. In 13th place, Gabriele Rindoni, as he had qualified. 14th was Renaud Kuppens. In 15th place, it was Edgar Maloin, and then Philippe Alberto in 16th. Again, all as per the grid. 17th was Guillaume Peugeot, ahead of Emanuele Colombini. In 19th place, Abby Eaton. 20th was Giovanna Anapoli. 21st, Andre Lewandowski. And 22nd to win his class, Donovan Privitello. 23rd is where we have a change, because that's after Nigel Skunderwood had his spin. So being promoted to 23rd, having qualified 24th, was Jean-Francois Bruno, ahead of Ibrahim Badoué. Then Karim Auger ahead of Carole Bache. Next was Marc Rostin from Alex Au. Wilfried Casalbon was behind him. And 30th, another one to gain a whole one place, was Riccardo Ianiello. 31st, Benjamin Vandenberg. In 32nd place, it was Holger Harmsen. And behind him, Petra Matic and Paolo Biglieri's car, ahead of Michael Donchemin. Then Hugo Conde from Gerard van der Horst. Next up, we had the GT3 Poland car of Mariusz Mikos, ahead of Enrico Betra. That was one of the early pitters, but with the result at 4 laps, and he pitted on 5, then keeps his original place, which is virtually the grid place anyway. Then it was Antonio Vossos from Gregor Mokchulski, Jose Alfredo Hernandez Ortega next from Delantha Malagamua. Jason Keats, who effectively caused that safety car by hitting the wall, classified 43rd, because that's where he was when he had his moment. Serge Doms next, ahead of Libor Dvoracek, Kumar Prabhakaran and Han Song Ting. So that is the result of a race that really never was. 4 laps, the result taken at, all of which were done behind the safety car. And the only reason for the shuffling was because people were having dramas. I promise you next time it'll be better weather and it'll be a proper race, and we look forward to your company the next time Super Trofeo hits the circuit. For now, from Ben Constanduros and David Addison, bye.